Brian McKnight feels the same way. I did not know that me and Brian would be here because I think we talked about him a couple of episodes ago. And at the time, I think the world probably was like, yo, Brian is on some crazy shit, right? But in the world where we talk about boundaries, it was crazy because a man sets boundaries. Be damned, right? Brian McKnight has not spoken until recently. We had the whole rundown, then come to find out, I had an interview with Anton Daniels. Shout out to him for getting Brian McKnight and the conversation, because for a while, we didn't hear his side of the story. All we heard was theirs. His sons, both of them, if I'm not mistaken, went on the internet and talked about him as a father, how he was absent, et cetera, et cetera. The wife maybe made some mention of things. We saw this man who we love, right? Anytime, but apparently he was having a hard time. And so finally he gave his side of the story. And for me, it kind of resonated because I think it highlighted how it's easy to paint a narrative towards men because we oftentimes, as men, can't speak up. And finally, when we do, some people may have a problem with it. But I thought the interview was well done. That's number one. Number two, how people repaint narratives despite what you might do for them and how when you stop doing for them, maybe things change, right? I thought that was fascinating. There was so many threads here. And I mean, if you believe his account of what occurred, I kind of feel like we might owe him an apology. So what are y'all thoughts in terms of, I think, the larger conversation in regards to whether or not we're so quick to believe the worst in men, especially black men, just because we hear things on social media, right? Number one. Number two, in terms of whether or not it's expected for us to speak up for ourselves, right? And then number three, I think most importantly, is what happens when black men set boundaries. If I'm not mistaken, his relationship was estranged with his two kids before one of them passed recently, right? He had to set boundaries according to what he said to Anton Daniels. I feel like there's a lot here to kind of unpack a little bit. So what are y'all thoughts? Feel free to start anywhere. Anytime, anywhere. What are y'all thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna start back at one, right? Because when we talked about thank you. When we talked about Brian at first, I remember thinking he was tripping. I remember like, man, you are really acting out. You out here changing names, you disowning people. Like this girl really got your nose open. You know what I mean? And it's funny because I guess it's just human nature and our ability, our bias, right? If we don't know a story, we fill in the blanks with what we think the story most likely would be. And maybe we've heard this story so many times of a man leaving his family and being, dragged off by sunshine and telling he ain't never coming home no more. And we thought that's what was going on with Brian, right? But there are two sides, three sides even to every story, right? There's his, there's hers, and there's the objective truth. And I'm glad he was able to tell his side because a lot of times, I know myself, I've done it. I've had people talking about me, and I've just been like, hey, I'm gonna keep it quiet. I'm gonna keep it solid. The truth gonna come out. And I have heard it said that lies have wings and the truth has club feet. So yeah, the truth may make it around, but it can take a while. And sometimes you don't want to wait for that. But Brian was patient. I respect his patience. I respect the fact that he, said his piece. And sometimes if you don't speak up for yourself, nobody will. To be honest, and I'll land on this, I wonder if tacitly black men have not been painted into a corner. If we speak up, we're sassy and we're overly emotional, right? But when we stay silent, then everybody gets to run their narrative about us without our input. It's like a catch-22. You know what I mean? But kudos to him. Shout out to him for biding his time and telling his story in his time and not even letting anybody force him to talk about it before he was ready, right? And whatever you're going to say about him, whatever your opinions are about him, until you get the whole story, you too are back at one. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
So I too will go back just a little bit. But first, before I go back just a little bit, I want to point out that two black men did speak on their father. So it's not all black men who don't speak up. It was because two did speak up. However, like you said, there's his side, their side, and then there's the truth. And that's for all stories, right? So somehow, some way, there needs to be meet in the middle. In Brian's case, but since we're talking about Brian, let's go ahead and go to my side. My side, looking from the outside, was like, damn, this is fucked up what he's doing. Because the way they had the story going, since we didn't know his side, was that he basically just told his family kick rocks. And considering this whole gender divide between the black woman and the black man that's currently happening, it was like, and he went to a other at the same time that the passport bros continue to rise and so forth. And so this whole commentary in regards to him just disregarding his black children, adopting two children that she had previously and having one of his own, especially when at the same time black women or black men are being told that they shouldn't be stepfathers and so forth, or don't date women or marry women with kids. And it was like he's literally doing the exact opposite, but black women was getting shitted on regardless of that particular type of conversation. So at that time, I was like, oh, this is messed up. He's disowning his family. Like, is he anti-black? Is this the anti-black Brian McKnight? I remember his concerts being canceled because his base was black women. And black women were saying, whoa, hold on a second. Not only have you abandoned your kids, now you left your wife for this woman who we believe was waiting in the wings, who's supposedly your best friend, which we're going to get to later, but was waiting in the wings this entire time. And it was just a whole hoopla. Hearing his side of the story, or vaguely hearing his side of the story somewhat, I would say that at this point, there's a lot that we didn't know, and we did rush to to make assumptions, right? And as a matter of fact, part of those assumptions was based on the fact that she put a book out there as well, highlighting some of the behavior and so forth. But then his own words and actions when he did speak spoke to some of that too. Like, so for example, saying that his kids were a product of sin, whereas this kid was created out of love. And it was like, well, damn. And rather, if his first child was created out of sin, being out of wedlock and whatnot, then that's still, what about your second child? So were all of them created out of sin? So, but then you talk about being created out of love and so forth. At the end of the day, it was just rubbing people the wrong way. And that also helped her narrative get pushed forward because some of the things that he was saying, but it could have just been the fact that he wasn't articulating in a way that we were able to receive it. While that was his truth, we were looking at it through our lens. And so I say kudos that he went ahead and shared his story. I think it's great that he's taken the time to open up. And since we are in the age of men becoming, and we're asking men to be more emotionally available, emotionally intelligent, and so forth, then at some point, we need to recognize that we need to take his story for what it is, because while it may not be her perspective, this is his perspective, and it adds additional light to what was actually happening in the situation, like especially pertaining to his kids and how he considered them ungrateful and so forth. But him providing the receipts of how they was ungrateful is another story, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and say that while I will still view Brian McKnight with side eye, um, I'm also going to give him props for getting his story out there. And I will also, and you guys hate for this, but I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to be accountable for my own prejudgment based on the information that I heard, and maybe sort of, kind of give him an apology. Brian, my fault. I should have waited. Where's your book at?